This is Tipping the Scale, where ESG meets action and we explore the future of sustainable business.
Yeah, that's exactly what we are doing. If you're just joining us, good morning. You're listening to the Social Impact Show with me, Sam Marshall. And Mondays to Fridays, our job is to not only entertain, but to educate as well. And that's what we do every Monday. Bernadette Bule, good morning. How are you doing, ma'am?
Good morning, Sam. I'm good, and yourself?
Great, great. Tell our listeners, our friends, our family, what is our mission here?
Okay, so Tipping the Scale is really a discussion around ESG concepts, really aligning ourselves and educating ourselves and, you know, the audience to really some terms that we listen to and we see these seem a bit big. How do I understand this?
I'm hearing this term. I don't know what it means.
Exactly. So environmental sustainability or social as well as governance. So those are the terms that we try to explore and really bring it back home and see how do we, you know, unpack it a little bit.
Yes. And with that being said, let's get into our phrase this week. Mm-hmm. What is the big word?
The big word is one we've all heard. It's called biosphere. Right? It seems a little bit more self-explanatory, but allow me to just break it down. So it's really a global ecosystem composed of living organisms and non-living factors from which they derive energy and nutrients, right? And so the Earth is a biosphere. In fact, Earth is called Biosphere 1 because it is really a combination of living and non-living environmental factors that come together and really make this ecosystem work.
Yeah. And so the idea in terms of the word biosphere, how do we, just from a day-to-day basis, think of that word and how it impacts us, if you understand what I'm trying to ask?
Absolutely. So we are living organisms, right? We are living people. We operate and we consume, we eat, we work, we talk, and we do all of that. Trees are also considered living, but then you also, or they're non-living, right? In that they don't do what we do as humans or other organisms like water. And they really play an important role in how the ecosystem works. How does the sun affect the water? How does the water affect the plants? How do the plants affect the butterflies and the bees? And how does that then affect our ecosystem in that we can produce plants, we can eat from the plants, and then when that becomes waste, how does it go back into the atmosphere and how does it recreate that same cycle continuously without affecting or negatively affecting the environment?
Yeah, 100%. And I think the other important thing is as well is that we need to, if we think of the biosphere and we think of sustainability, we need to really think about the impact we have in terms of harming the planet, because that impacts the biosphere. Absolutely. And it's something that we really need to think about. How do we, yet again ties back to our footprint, how do we engage with the environment around us? Are you, for example, Arbor Week, planting a tree? Mm-hmm. Are you using methods in your home? If you think of things like, for example, separation of waste. Absolutely. If you think of all of these interconnected little things, that has an impact on our biosphere. And like you said, it's living. We need to look after it in order for it to look after us.
Absolutely. And even how we get rid of waste. You know, a lot of us plant and we cook, or we cook in the house and all of that. How do you take that same waste, instead of just throwing it into a bin, how else can we do to make it environmentally friendly? Or are you doing it at the expense of the environment, right?
Yeah. And if you're still driving, you go, why should ordinary people care? Well, climate change affects weather, food, prices, water availability and health. Deforestation leads to less oxygen and more floods. Pollution causes diseases, dirty water, and harm to wildlife. That is why you should care. And so the biosphere isn't just a science concept. Yeah. It is taking care of our home, our families, our structure, our nature. Yeah. And so that's very, very important. Very important conversation to have. What's your big story this week?
Our big story is actually centered around our concept for the week. So in the early 1990s, I was like 4 or 5 then.
Wow. Was I an adult then? I don't want to give away my age, dude. Am I giving away my age? Okay, Tim
That
is
was
saying,
before
like, very,
democracy.
very shyly, he's going, I was in my teens. I was in my teens, dude. I was in
All
my
right,
teens.
Tim, let's
Tim
discuss that after this.
Tim was not even an idea then.
No concept,
No
of the
concept
biosphere.
Of the biosphere.
So in the early 1990s, a small team tried to survive in a sealed space containing replicas of Earth's ecosystem. And so they call this space, it's a small town in Arizona in the US, obviously, where there's a desert, and the structure seems really something from a science fiction movie, right? And so it was, they called it Biosphere 2, and it was named after our own planet, Biosphere 1. And it was a massive complex of glass pyramids, domes, and towers spread across 3 hectares, with tropical rainforest topped by a 7.6 meter waterfall, a savanna, and a fog. And they really tried to replicate what we have on Earth.
Yeah.
And
experiment.
An interesting experiment, but according to experts, it failed dismally. Because they found that, there was a lot of carbon dioxide that was released into the space. They found that, after 2 years, people couldn't really survive into the space. And there was amazing lessons that were taken from there. But the objective was really to experiment if humans could survive in a self-contained Earth-like environment. And the facility was built in Oracle, Arizona, and covered 3.4 hectares and featured several biomes, including a rainforest savanna, as mentioned. But some of the challenges that they faced were significant challenges, including oxygen level drops, food shortages, excuse my tongue twister there, and interpersonal conflicts among the crew members. So there was 8 people that were living there, and they said, okay, let's try this out. Oxygen levels became it started at 21%. It declined, and then it went down as 14%.
So this is quite interesting for me, because we are talking about going to Mars, right? Mm-hmm. And it's so interesting that you're talking about the interpersonal conflicts, level of carbon dioxide raising, the decline of oxygen. Obviously, this mirrors every movie I've ever seen.
Absolutely.
Where people just can't get along.
Is that?
It's quite an interesting experiment. And
yes.
So that's the lesson that was learned.
Definitely. And I think one of the biggest takeaways for me was really to say that there is no such thing as replicating Earth. There's no plan B. This is our planet, and we need to take care of it. The other thing that came out of it was that if you want to sustain this, you would need to spend about 82,000 USD per person just to sustain this colony. And I found it counterintuitive, because if we don't engage with our environment, it still produces within itself, right?
Okay.
What these 8 people found, that they had to consistently work the earth to sustain this environment. And so it was definitely a big takeaway. And
so you're saying that the biosphere could be replicated, but it would be cripplingly expensive.
Absolutely. I mean, it would really be counterintuitive in terms of living. Like, you're just living to kind of keep this environment.
So take care of what you have, basically.
Exactly.
That's a very interesting story. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Upcoming events.
So the one that is upcoming is Bragg, that I'd like you to please talk to and really tell us about who are the speakers, what is it about. I mean, I think the term itself is so catching for me.
Yeah.
And last week we spoke about how it coincides with Mandela Day.
Yeah.
And how a lot of social impact organizations or companies, corporates that are doing amazing work within the social impact space are making waves and tides. And within the space that we are talking to, social good is quite an important thing, right?
Yeah. I mean, Bragg's best results achievements gathering. And the idea is that literally organizations have been invited to come and brag, to tell you what they're doing right, how they're getting it right, why they're doing what they're doing, and what was the challenge. But the idea is that most events focus on the challenge or the challenges and the lack of being able to deal with this challenge. Bragg flips it, where it's the challenge, but how did we overcome it?
Absolutely.
And so it's quite unique to see big brands on stage, brands that we know, well-known brands.
Yeah.
Brands like your fiber company, Vumatel, right?
Yeah.
Majority of the fiber laid around your property is probably Vumatel to a large degree, depending on the area. You've got brands like Cotton On Foundation coming to talk to you about the work that they're doing.
Yeah.
Then you've got Standard Bank. We all know the brands, but the Standard Bank Foundation does amazing work in this space. The organizations like Sariti Institute, they are not just an organization that's focused around education and some of the stuff that you know, like the Arabapaleng projects that they run, but also they've taken over communities like Deelpad.
Wait, Uncle Sam, go back to the Arabapaleng project. What is that? We don't know.
So
Break it down
Arabapaleng
first.
project was this tool that Sariti created for the education sector to be able to foster learning in spaces, but also at the same time, it doesn't just empower the student, it also empowers the teacher to become much better teachers, right?
Awesome, yeah.
So and they just wildly successful. So they're going to come and talk about the work that they've done in that spaces. Then I'm thinking of organizations like Fluid Intellect. They built South Africa's first AI tool called Satori, which is proudly South African, built in South Africa, for South Africa.
And they're going to be there?
They will be presenting what Satori is capable of doing.
Yes.
If you think about ChatGPT, well, they built their own ChatGPT.
Awesome
but
stuff.
for South Africa.
Yes.
And the cool thing about it is, it's not that cool, but because it should be normal by now. But it's woman-owned, woman-led, woman-founded, and so that's going to be a great conversation. Then we've got, and I'm just trying to, I'm going blank now as I think about of all the brands that are involved. But then we've got Telkom. Telkom is going to be there. People don't know this, but Telkom does a lot of social impact work.
Amazing stuff, right?
Incredible work in this space. They're going to be talking about, and remember, they're coming to brag.
We love people who brag about good things.
About good things.
Absolutely.
And for the longest time in this space, people were allowed, don't share. But the idea is that in order for us to learn through lived experience, we have to share. Storytelling is a component of that. And so having these brands then come in and tell you how they're fixing these challenges, what they've identified. We've got Engine.
Oh my goodness.
Engine is a massive multinational. They've now been bought over by Vivio, I think. Vivio. And Engine does so much work. Engine has built hydroponic systems for schools.
Wow.
The ability for that school to feed itself, but at the same time, they train the local guys to be able to work on it. So they're coming to talk to you about things like that. And so ACI, for example, Nicole Solomons and her team, they've built an entire city called Oliver's Garden.
Oh, please.
And the entire city is off-grid. Wow. And everybody in that city gets to eat. They live off solar. These are projects that people don't know about.
Yes.
And then you've got, so between Vumatel, ACI, Sariti, Standard Bank, Telkom, I'm trying to think of, have you ever heard of Talavani Banks?
Please tell me what that is.
Talavani Banks is from a company called Analytics X, but he also owns a company called Spaza Eats. And what he's done is built an entire digital system for Spaza shops to bring them into this new era. They're building the technology. So all these Spaza shops are now all digitally on a platform that you can pay with your cards, but they've built an integrated system. And this is a gentleman who saw a gap and has built an entire entrepreneurial ecosystem.
I love that.
For Spaza shops. And of
but
course,
don't give too much away. People must still register and tell them when is it happening.
Yeah, well, it's happening on the 17th of July at Alexander Forbes. It's a day before Mandela Day.
Awesome stuff.
Come and get your dopamine hit. If you want to hear what is working in South Africa.
I'm so excited.
If you want to hear who is doing what are these companies doing?
Yes.
It's going to absolutely blow you away because you'll see these very well-known brands, the Standard Banks, the Telkoms, the Vumatels, the Cotton Ons.
I love what Cotton On does. I mean, I think their clothes
by the way,
are
Pizza
amazing.
Hut is there as well.
Oh, bless. Are we getting free pizza?
That's a conversation for another day. But the point what I'm trying to say is you see the brand, but you don't know the amount of work that they're doing behind the scenes.
CSI is so important.
To elevate young women and then empower those young women.
Absolutely.
Sun International is going to be there.
Yeah.
And the work that they do, I mean, obviously, you know, Sun International, the hotel group.
The hotel group, yeah.
But what people don't know is the amount of work that they do within communities to build communities.
Oh, that's awesome stuff.
So it's going to be a massive day of listening to these brands come and
Yeah.
tell you just the work that they do.
I like it. I think you see the brand differently when you know what they're doing in terms of giving back to the communities that they serve and the work that they do. So I'm really excited
But
about
also
that.
every time you walk into that shop, you now know that when you're spending your money there, that a massive portion of that rand is going towards your community outside the shop.
Absolutely.
And I think that is always an amazing thing to find. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And Cotton On has been one of those brands that I
Over
shop
100
on.
million rand, eh?
Really?
Raised over hundreds of millions of rands, giving back to schools.
I can believe that.
Giving back to communities, building communities.
Yeah.
So it's just a very different day. It's a fun day. But between the AI presenters and the live DJ,
Right.
you're just gonna have brands. It's a feel good, fun day at Alexander Ford.
Who would have thought a rock star would put together something like this? This is amazing.
Well, I
Real
mean,
life rock star. We
you
really
know,
excited
anyway.
for you.
Yeah, so that's one of it. And any other events?
No, that's the one that I wanted to talk to. There's one that is called the SU20, and it's aligned to the G20. And it's really bringing together entrepreneurship ecosystems from G20 countries from the 21st to the 22nd. But this one is by invite only. So if you have received an invite for the midterm engagement, it's really going to be an exciting one because it will be led by the G20 as South Africa is leading the G20 presidency. And so the entrepreneurial discussion is so important because it also goes back to how corporates are impacting the environment. And so this will be taking place at the Birchwood Hotel and will be held alongside the SME ministerial meeting in the same space of between the 23rd to the 24th. And so I just wanted to highlight those two events, especially within the month of July. I think it's going to be a fun, packed calendar. You know, with Mandela happening, with Mandela Day happening, the G20 is also something that is quite strategic for our environment, entrepreneurial space. And so I just thought to highlight that.
Bernadette, as always, a pleasure. Nice having you in
Absolutely.
studio. It's called Tipping the Scale. We do this every Monday. We unpack the big terms you hear, followed up with a story, and then an event, if you're interested, that you might like to attend. So it's always a pleasure. Until we see you again next week.
Thank you, sir.
That also means we come to the end of the show. As always, it's a jam-packed show. So thanks to Melissa Lewis from All Fashion Sourcing, the event that's happening in Cape Town starting on the 8th. It's a massive event in the design space, both for fashion and textiles. And this year, it's not just driving connectivity around the players, but it's also about teaching you about the industry, about fast fashion, fake fashion. How do we build an industry that's sustainable? How do we create opportunities for young designers and creatives? So that's going to be an amazing event running from the 8th till the 10th at the CTICC. We also had Nicole Biondi, who is an independent consultant with the Do More Foundation, and the work that they're doing this year in climate resilience, but around ECD centers, right? So it's all of that as well. And if you want to find out more, you can go to the Do More Foundation, get involved and see how they're engaging with ECD centers and making it resilient. And then, Bernadette Bule, who curates this experience for us, and so that we can all learn together. Remember, you can go to our TikTok platforms. You can follow us. We're on day what? We're on day 95 of telling you a positive story on our socials until we grow that audience to 1 million people. And Tim, I think we've had thousands and thousands of views and likes and comments by now. South Africans really appreciating the fact that we post a positive story every day and joining that community. And then, of course, you can go to socialtv.co.za. That's www.social-tv.co.za. If you're tired of all the negative news and you want to know what's happening in the country and what's working, go to the Social TV platform. There's tons of videos, tons of stories, tons of stuff for you to engage with and kind of see what's happening in this beautiful country, in this place we call Brand South Africa. I'll be back again tomorrow. Crazy show tomorrow. We're all over the country. But until then, remember, be good, do good.